I think there's been some encouragement in the local Ohio stuff. The fact that the Republicans tried to change the voting thresholds, that you needed supermajority to get things passed through the state, but then that didn't go through. Then the abortion protections came in with like 57%. So,
do you think that referendums on certain policies are indicative of a population switching, like, to support another party? So when we saw in Ohio for referendums on abortion or referendums on marijuana, when these things pass, do you think that's an indication that the state is like moving in a different direction? Do you know historically if that's been the case for other states?
I don't know historically, but I would say it seems like one side is failing. So like the Republicans don't seem to be having on the right side of the issue. Does that mean those people are going to vote for Biden? Not necessarily, but the energy's there, the organization, the outreach. And so I think that does have some impact on people voting. What do you think?
I think it depends on what issues is dominating the campaign. It's part of the reason why Trump sunk the immigration bill, is because if he can keep the issue on immigration, when you poll Americans, most people know that Trump's been hitting this forever. It's like with Geert Wilders. Once immigration became the main issue in the Netherlands, even if people didn't agree with Geert Wilders on, the economy or any of these other issues, if you're gonna get somebody to deal with immigration, pick the original. And so if he can keep that issue vibrant, then Trump can dominate. But if the issue is health care, and we saw his health care proposal, which is, I'll show it to you later, actually no, just get rid of Obamacare with no replacement. If those are the issues that we focus on, if those are the issues that can theme the campaign, then I think Democrats can do better. If marijuana legalization and abortion is what themes the campaign, Democrats are going to have high turnout, and I think they can win.
That kind of cynicism is just insane, though. The fact that they have this problem that they will run on because it's what makes them popular, but they don't actually want that problem solved.
The issue is that Republicans,
when,
the problem is they have no platform.
Right.
Because they jumped off the populist bandwagon.
By the way, didn't they not? Don't they keep just renewing the last year party platform?
Yeah, they just don't have like if you're voting for, it's funny because people will say that like Trump inspires hatred, but I feel like truly at this point, if you're voting Republicans, you're just voting like not for the Democrats, not for the woke people, not for the globalists, not for that. But like if you truly ask, like, well, what is Trump going to do differently?
I always wonder.
More? I mean,
how do you? Here's what I wonder is because I was doing some research for Ohio, and I remember, for some reason I just got stuck on this interesting story about the bridge that connects Ohio to Kentucky, the Brent Spence Bridge. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, and it's falling under the infrastructure bill. It's getting like 1.6 billion in funds. It's like one of the worst bottlenecks in the country, second worst. And even today, one of the young canvassers is a student who goes down across that bridge every day, and he's like very grateful that it's finally getting like repairs. But then one of the Ohio Republicans, he was telling me, voted against the infrastructure bill, but now he's bragging about and taking credit for this bridge that's getting redone.
Don't Republicans in Congress do that shit all the time? Vote down aid packages and stuff, and then brag
bill. Yep.
They get to have it both ways a lot.
And how did Democrats combat that? How do you guys?
I don't know. The same thing, because obviously I've been doing the impeachment stuff more, but it was the same thing with Trump's impeachment, where a lot of Republicans are saying like, oh, well, you can't hold him criminally or civilly liable. But then they also said when you went to impeach him after he was out of office, oh, well, we can't impeach him because he's already out of office. Like they want to have it both ways on a lot of different things. I notice it's kind of frustrating.
I think the immigration debate really just threw me for a loop because Biden offered them, in some opinions, even to me and to some progressives, stuff that was even too much. Stuff that even made some of us feel uncomfortable. Giving them things that they've been requesting for more than a decade. Like the idea of stopping people from crossing from one country, like Guatemala, all the way to the United States because they could have stopped somewhere else. That type of reform is stuff that Republicans have been asking for forever. The vast majority of the negotiated deal was Republican priorities. If you talk to Dan Crenshaw or Senator Lakeford, who is an immigration hawk, he's the one who negotiated on the Republican side, they are in shock because these are priorities that all of their compatriots have been telling them that they needed to get through. That's what they were supposed to engage in with negotiations for Ukraine aid, and it sunk solely because they didn't want it to be a campaign issue. This is purely just politics over party.
I mean, if Republicans lose immigration, what do they possibly have to fight over?
Tax cuts.
Nothing right now.
Tax cuts?
School books, maybe?
Don't they want to get rid of income tax in Ohio?
I mean, like maybe, but right? Like regardless, and the sentiment is finally catching up because it was a vibe session. It was, okay. It was a vibe session for a long time. Americans are finally starting to realize that Biden is presiding over like one of the strongest economies in the entire history of the United States. And especially over the next several months, like people have already woken up to it. People are going to continue to wake up to it.
And Federal Reserve going to be dropping rates.
Maybe, yeah. They might. They're talking about, ooh, That's just
Gas-
It's going to help.
When you've already got the majority of Americans like who refinanced their homes to like 3%. I think this is the highest share of Americans that have ever had interest rates for mortgages that low.
Yeah.
In like the history of the United States is insane.
This is the longest. Well, there's just a few more data points to throw out there. This is the longest sub 4% unemployment rate since the 1960s.
2 years.
And GasBuddy is predicting that by the end of this year, by December, gas prices across the country on average would be $2.99.
Yeah, so here's what I want to know is why are Democrats, or at least this is the impression I got, I could be wrong, but I feel like they don't sing their own praises very much at all. Like I was looking a couple of days ago just at some lists of like Democrat achievements in Biden's term or things that they're in the process of doing. And the amount of things I saw that just I've never heard of before, even though I feel like I watch American politics quite a lot. Like one of the examples was that they're in the process of getting rid of like mystery charges on like airline
Biden tweeted
transactions, things like that. And I think one of them was also like overdraft charges. I think because right now in America it's like $30 to $40 for an overdraft charge, but they're putting it like a break-even thing. So
you got to be really careful when you
yeah.
talk about like your victories, because if people view you as complacent, they hate you, and people see frustration way easier than they see victories. So like in a way, Hillary actually tried that exact counter. Remember when Trump was doing the "Make America Great Again" and Hillary was like, "America's already great," and people were like, "Fuck you, no, it's not." You have to be really careful, because if Biden comes out and he's like, "Oh, I think we're doing really well right now," then any type of anxiety, even if it's not real, just perceived, Trump will jump on, or anybody. Oh, he thinks it's great. What about the 20,000, Chinese COVID plus immigrants coming down with, upgraded fentanyl from Chinese manufacturing labs and blah, blah. Like they'll find any bit of like discomfort to harp on. Or what about inflation?
Is this another like have it both ways though? Because when I saw Trump before the election, it's always we have the greatest economy, the greatest military, the greatest border.
Kind of, but he also always had the shadowy enemy to fight against. It was the deep state always. He was talking about draining the swamp when he owned the whole swamp. He was the swamp creature, and it was all his campaign people, and he was still talking about draining it. And I'm like, these are your appointees.
I think you don't have to necessarily fix people's problems. If you can, that's great. But you have to let people know you give a damn, and you have to let them know I hear you. You're not dismissing their problems outright. And I think that's what the lesson Democrats have learned a bit. And that's why Biden is saying, listen, I know people aren't feeling it yet, but it's coming. It's coming. When it comes to the economy.
There are a lot of things that are benefiting right now, but if you're somebody who still feels the effects of the housing crisis, right? Biden can't just snap his fingers and all these houses are built due to local zoning laws and the whole sorts of things. And whether or not it's fair, a lot of these issues will be placed at the head of the federal government. If something happens to you, a lot of people come to the conclusion, president's fault. Who's in charge of the country? This happened.
You know what?
President.
You know
Great
what?
example of this, and this is the thing that really gets me. When the child tax credit died, people started complaining towards Biden, even though it was the Republicans who ended up killing the child tax credit. But whose administration did it happen under? Biden's. Therefore, Biden's fault happened under his watch.
It doesn't matter. The housing, renting stuff, I don't think it actually matters.
Really?
I think a lot of people complain about it on Twitter, but isn't it like it's like 70% of Americans are homeowners?
Yes.
More people have refinanced under low rates than at any point in fucking history. Rent, believe it or not, is actually falling in major cities. So you're talking about 30% of the electorate, most of whom are younger and don't fucking vote anyway, probably not even registered in the states they've moved to. They're not important.
Well,
he shouldn't. People complain about like rent and stuff all the time. You're like the minority of Americans. You're probably not electorally that relevant. It's just like it's like expending so much political capital on like student loan debt or whatever. It's just like it's a nice thing to do if you can. But those complaints, like if you were to ask, I feel like if you were to poll the average American on Twitter, what are the most important things in America? They'd be like student loans and the housing crisis or whatever. Like, but the reality is most Americans that have houses are doing really well. Their houses are appreciated.
Houses.
Yeah, but that's like 70% of Americans. It's a huge percentage of Americans that live in houses, and the homeownership rates are right where they're supposed to be for every generation. Like they're fine.
So outside of
Wait.
So outside of
let's be clear though. Young people are supposed to be part of the Democrats' coalition. Young people are people who are heavily affected by the housing crisis right now. And young people are the ones who are not able to buy houses at large rates. They're the ones that are feeling the pain under that.
Yeah.
And since they're part of our coalition, even if they're a smaller percentage of the overall population, we should care about their needs. Even if they're not part of our coalition, we should still care about their needs. Especially if they're part of our coalition.
They need to have a realist. Listen, I'm starting to see Gen Zers tweet things like 20 years ago you could work a job and afford an apartment on your own and blah blah. And I'm old enough now to say 20 years ago minimum wage was $5.15 an hour. Fuck you. We were not buying apartments with full-time jobs at McDonald's in my day. That was not true ever.
But back now, maybe of course this is my experience for my local issues. But for me, interacting with NIMBYs as a young renter in my city is a horrible experience. Yeah. You're familiar with NIMBYs?
Not in my backyard.
Yeah. And for me, I'm trying to build I want new apartments, I want new condos, I want new everything because I want my prices to go down. But the NIMBYs are stopping it. And that, even though, again, it's not at the head of the federal government, that is something that's affecting places in LA, that's affecting areas in DC, and it affected people in my city. That's not a Biden problem, but that's a problem that is affecting young people.